All right, I'm back. Now I'd like to turn to Love and Friendship, a small portion of which you have read for today. I do hope you read the introductory pages that I have on the syllabus. They will give you a lot of information that I'm not going to repeat, so you need to look at those. I'm going to focus today simply on those first few letters, those first few pages in Love and Friendship, which is, I guess you would call it a mini parodic, a mini parody of a sensibility or romance novel. The first thing that I hope that you noticed when you began Love and Friendship, which I think I've told you Jane Austen wrote when she was 14 years old, is that it is dedicated to Eliza de Fouillade. I've already told you about Eliza de Fouillade. She's the one whose first husband is guillotined. She's the one who flirts with Jane Austen's brothers, Henry and James, and eventually marries Henry. She's the one who is often a model for more kind of wild child female characters in Jane Austen's work. So she's the perfect person for a 14-year-old to dedicate the crazy love and friendship piece to. She was about 14 years older than Jane Austen, so if Jane Austen is 14, Eliza de Fouillade is a very worldly 29-year-old who clearly Jane Austen is looking at with admiration, but also perhaps with a little bit of a satirical gleam in her eye. It's an epistolary novel. Why not? It's a dominant form during the period. So you'll get a sense of what an epistolary novel looks like here, though clearly these letters are quite short in most cases compared to the kinds of letters you would get in a non-parodic epistolary novel. The main thing I want to talk about today and have you think about, since you've clearly already read this by the time you're viewing this video, and the thing that I actually ask myself and continue to ask myself as I read it, in this parodic novel, what segments are meant to be simply funny? They're just put out there to make people laugh. And what parts actually gesture in a significant way to the themes that we will see over and over and over again in Jane Austen. Now, I'm not going to go through this page by page. I'm just going to pick out some particular incidents that I think we can read with some confidence, either one way or the other, maybe some that float a little bit in between. And I want to begin with the very first letter, in which Isabel writes to her friend Laura to ask Laura if Laura will write to Isabel's daughter, Marianne, to give her a story of her adventurous, that is to say, of Laura's adventurous and tragic and sensibility-filled life, in order that the young Marianne can learn how to avoid these pitfalls. But what does she do in the very first letter? She totally insults Isabel. She says, "You are this day 55. If a woman may ever be said to be in safety from the determined perseverance of disagreeable lovers and the cruel persecutions of obstinate fathers, surely it must be at such a time of life." She's saying, well, you're so old, nobody's going to come after you anymore, and you can't be a sensibility heroine yourself, so maybe you can write to my daughter. Well, of course, Isabel, who's Miss Sensibility already, reacts by saying, are you kidding? I'm still in the show, I'm still in the action. But right off the bat, you have this kind of catty exchange. One woman's asking another woman a favor, but she's sticking the knife in at the same time. I think this is just meant to be funny. And it's pretty funny, all right? In any case, Laura agrees, regardless, and she begins to write to Marianne. I'm not going to look at the first two letters closely, but I will point out a couple of things that I think you should have noticed and should have set off a little light bulb in your brain. And the first is at the top of page 95, where she says, a sensibility too tremblingly alive to every affliction of my friends, my acquaintance, and particularly to every affliction of my own, was my only fault, if fault it could be called. And then she goes on to describe how in every other way she is absolutely perfect. She's beautiful, she's charming, she's artistic, she's talented. But you see, even in slightly disclaiming this trembling sensibility, she's also aggrandizing herself. Because as I said in an earlier mini lecture, this is what you wanted. You wanted to be the person who was so filled with acute sensibility that anything just set you off, and you also could interpret it absolutely correctly. All right, moving on. One other literary device that Jane Austen uses at the bottom of 95 that I just want to acquaint you with. This does not show up that often in her later works, but it's something that people like Jonathan Swift used a lot, and it's called a contaminated catalog, which simply means a series of seeming parallel equations in which one of the equations or one of the examples is completely wrong, is completely off, is completely in another world from the first two or three. So let's see what she does at the bottom of page 95. When Laura's telling Marianne what advice she was given when she was young. So, here was the advice. Beware, my Laura, she would often say. Beware of the insipid vanities and idle dissipations of the metropolis of England. Beware of the unmeaning luxuries of Bath and of the stinking fish of Southampton. Ha! Get it? She's saying, watch out, for vanities and dissipations in London and luxuries in Bath. Certainly those are parallel. Stinking fish? Not really, okay? So think about how contaminated catalogs work, because we're going to see another one a little later on. Moving on to the two most famous letters of the first half of Love and Friendship. Let's go to letter 5 and 6, starting on page 96, and see what happens there. At the beginning, we see Laura. Again, remember, Laura is writing about her past life to Marianne. We see Laura sitting in a part of rural England out toward Wales. I don't see where they actually locate it. Well, the Vale of Usk, yeah. It's either in Wales or close to Wales. And suddenly there's a knocking on the door. And everybody says, there's someone at the door. There's someone at the door. But do they get up and open the door? No. And then, seconds later, someone's at the door. Someone's at the door. Do they get up and open the door? No, nobody gets up to open the door. Well, yeah, we smile. This is a really juvenile joke. It's just a running joke, a stupid running joke. But it does kind of make you laugh, right? Why aren't these people getting up? Why are they talking about this? And they're not doing anything. Does it have any larger meaning? I don't think so. It's kind of a kid's joke. Remember, this is called juvenilia, literature written by a child. However, if there is any undercurrent of meaning here besides just funny stuff, it may be that these people are incapable of doing anything because of their dependence on servants. Because by the bottom of page 96, we discover that none of the servants are in. But as soon as the servant comes home, then she goes and opens the door. Mary the servant, goes and opens the door. Is this a social comment? Maybe, maybe not. But I think the first part is just a joke. It's a joke. No deeper meaning. All right, but now we get to the crux of this scene, because once the door's open, who's there? Somebody selling insurance? No. A youth? Yes, a youth. But what a youth. The most beauteous and amiable youth I had ever beheld. Well, of course. This guy's got to be the instant hero, right? So Laura looks at him, and suddenly what kicks in? My natural sensibility had already been greatly affected by the sufferings. What are his sufferings? We don't even know yet. I guess he's kind of cold and hungry because he's been out going the wrong direction from London or from Middlesex for who knows how long. But come on, what has he really suffered? Been so greatly affected by the sufferings of the unfortunate stranger, and no sooner did I first behold him than I felt that on him the happiness or misery of my future life must depend. Sensibility in action. She knows he's the one. I will marry him, and we will live forever after, happily or unhappily. She's not sure yet. Here we see pretty much full frontal attack on sensibility, on the excesses of sensibility that I talked to you about in the mini lecture of a couple times back. Beginning of letter 6. She finds out from the youth that his name is Lindsay. And then she says, for particular reasons, however, I shall conceal it under that of Talbot. Well, that's funny, but does it mean anything more? I don't think it means anything that's that important, but I think what it gestures towards are the large number of beauteous and amiable youths of unknown origin who show up in Gothic and Romance novels and often show up under an assumed name. So this guy isn't using an assumed name, but she decides she's going to give him one anyhow because, of course, being the perfect sensibility heroine, she knows the way the conventions work. Then we find out something about him. 1, he told us that he was the son of an English baronet. Baronet, very important rank below true nobility, but above the rank of knight, which we will talk about much later. Well, not much later, next week or so, because it's the rank that Jane Austen knew the best of all the titled ranks. 2nd, that his mother had been many years no more. His mom had died, so he's giving his social and familial pedigree and situation. And finally, and he had a sister of the middle size. What? She wears a size 9. It totally doesn't match. Who cares what her size is? Another contaminated catalog. Should make you smile because you're not ready for it. Dad's a baronet. My mom died. And my sister wears a size 9. Huh. All right. Don't think it goes beyond that. In any case, then somehow, and I'm not going to keep going Lindsay or Talbot, this guy's first name is Edward, and that's what we're going to know him as throughout the rest of this novel, immediately addresses everybody in her family by their first name when he's not even been told their names. I guess he has a cute sensibility too, such a cute sensibility that he can figure out their names without having ever been told them. I have no idea. And then we get to the meat of the matter, because he tells her and the family why he is effectively on the road, why he has left home. Okay? And here it goes. My father, seduced by the false glare of fortune and the deluding pomp of title, insisted on giving my hand to Lady Dorothea. No, never, never, exclaimed I. Dorothea is lovely and engaging. I prefer no woman to her. But know, sir, that I scorn to marry her in compliance with your wishes. No, never shall it be said that I obliged my father. Okay. Is this a little rebel without a cause? Fashionable rebellion? He thinks Lady Dorothea is awesome, but he won't marry her for one reason, because his dad wants him to. What this points to, again in a very parodic way, is the way that people who were, well, you could either say afflicted by acute sensibility or faking it, saw themselves as unconventional, as rebels against conventional norms. Everything was based on doing something that made you seem individual, idiosyncratic. And so you clearly couldn't follow what your parents wanted you to do. Now there's kind of a contradiction here, because if he really felt a lot for Dorothea, then he's effectively overriding one convention of sensibility with another convention of sensibility. And this is the point I want to make about sensibility as a form of rebellion or going against what I guess we could call social norms. Yes, it does, but like every kind of reaction against social norms, protest against social norms, rebellion against social norms, that rebellion, that protest, and that reaction soon takes on a set of conventions itself, and it becomes conventional for rebels without a cause to behave in certain ways. So while the sensibility people think that they're being unconventional, in effect, they're actually following their own set of sensibility conventions, and a lot of these, as displayed in the novels that Jane Austen has read, are exactly what Jane Austen is laughing at and critiquing in this work. And clearly, one of them is not obeying your parents, no matter what. But perhaps most importantly is what Edward then tells Laura his father, Edward's father, said to Edward after Edward refused to marry Lady Dorothea. And here it goes. "Where, Edward, in the name of wonder," said he, "did you pick up this unmeaning gibberish? You have been studying novels, I suspect." What does that mean? He's been studying novels to learn how to be a sensibility hero. Ha ha ha, yes, but this goes to the heart of a major social disagreement that was pervasive in English culture, and especially literary culture, from probably the 1720s forward. And that is, there were many conservative critics and authors who accused novelists of writing works that corrupted the youth of England, that made the youth of England want to behave the crazy ways that their sensibility heroes and heroines, or the romance heroes and heroines, behaved. This argument went on and on and on. It was so important that Jane Austen is still kind of in the middle of it when she writes her first novel, or publishes her first novel, called Sense, meaning common sense, and sensibility. So, Jane Austen here is making a very specific statement about something that she will be concerned with throughout her work. Number one, because she is a novelist. And she writes novels. And she's very conscious of the conventions of the various kinds of novels, as you will see when we get to Northanger Abbey. And so she clearly thinks that novels are a interesting and worthwhile genre, but she also, I think, sees that they can in fact have deleterious effects if people who read them actually believe them. And I think the modern equivalent, which gets critiqued in exactly the same way for your generation, is social media. When I was growing up, the genres that got critiqued for this reason were movies, and to a degree, I guess, novels, but maybe even more than movies, TV shows. Every generation, or subsequent generations, I suppose, will have different media that affect how they behave. In Jane Austen's time, it was the novel. that was taking all of the flack. Okay, one more thing, two more things, and then we'll finish for today. We get a little geography lesson. One thing we find out about Edward early is that his GPS isn't really set very straight, because he says that he leaves his father's house in Bedfordshire wanting to go to Middlesex. This would be like driving from maybe Georgetown up north down to South Austin. That's what he's planning on doing. That's where he thinks he's going. And he ends up, if he were in Texas, trying to get from Georgetown to South Austin in Fredericksburg, way out in the hill country. Here's how it looks on the map of England. Here's Bedfordshire right here. Here's Middlesex. Leaves Bedfordshire. Instead of getting to Middlesex, he ends up over here. Cool. Finally, of course, instant marriage. By the end of this chapter, Laura has married Edward. Because, of course, one thing that being a sensibility character and thereby spontaneously knowing what the right thing is to do in all possible situations and circumstances, you don't have to think. You just react. Boom, 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 boom. So, why not get married 2 hours after you met this guy? Again, Jane Austen having a little bit of a joke there, but pointing to, I think, some of the pitfalls of unthinking reliance on sensibility. Okay, I didn't go to letter 7, but in letter 7, the one thing that I would say you should look at is when they meet Philippa, Edward's sister. This is one of the few, what I would call sense or common sense characters in this novel. And when they, of course, reject the need for money or support, oh, sensibility people, we don't need money, we don't need financial support, and so forth. Edward says, never, never, Augusta, top page 100, will I so demean myself. Support? What support will Laura want, which she can receive from him? And the sister replies, only those very insignificant ones as victuals, it looks like victuals, but victuals and drink. In other words, yeah, only food and water, that would be two that she might need. In any case, this just points, again, to sensibility's rejection of what common sense people say, no, you have to have, and ways you have to think. But as you will see, as you move on in your reading for tomorrow, sensibility people have a way, actually, of getting those things because they believe they are entitled to them without working at all. I leave that for you to discover as you do the reading for tomorrow, and perhaps you'll have some questions about that to put at the bottom of your summaries, or about anything else, anything you'd like in terms of issues, ideas, pet peeves, whatever. Summary at the top, questions, issues, and so forth, at least 3 of them at the bottom.